You're listening to Channel K9 News. We interrupt the Hammerbarn Project podcast feed to bring you this breaking story. Frank has the details.
Thanks for that, Jade. Well, listeners, using all our connections and all our power, which is very limited, we have managed to pull off an interview with not one of Brendan's relatives, not one of our wives.
I got plenty of those.
You do.
They're like coming out of the woodwork.
We've got them
everywhere.
forever.
Coming out my ears.
We have managed to pull off an interview with the one, the only, Joe Brumm, creator, writer, director, the man behind Bluey. You know, other shows might interview, like, there's one of the animators, and let's talk to, Joff Bush.
Usually you start low and just kind of work your way up through, the guy who brings them the lunch, the person who, the janitor,
guy who opens the door.
Through that.
Yeah. We just went straight to the top.
Well, why bother? Go straight to the top.
We just pressed the button on the elevator that said, ding, penthouse suite, up we go.
I don't believe it. Marty, do you believe it?
No, definitely not. I think I'm as excited as I was that day that I found the Monte Carlo that actually had 3 layers.
You should have
seen
seen that
2.
day.
That's not a thing.
I still don't believe it. But
it was a Mod 3 Carlo, guys. It was so exciting.
Joe Brumm's got some big greenfield shoes to fill.
That is, listeners, that is huge.
So without further ado, let's hear from the man himself.
Oh boy. Well, I can't believe I'm saying this, but welcome Joe Brumm to the Hammerbarn Project.
Hey!
Nice to be here.
Oh, thank you so much, man. Thank you is one of those. It's one of those times where thank you does not quite suffice.
Oh no, don't be silly. I've been listening to your podcast. It's great.
There it is.
Don't freak out. Don't freak out. It's okay.
Yeah. It's okay.
I don't know if that's like self-indulgent or not. Listening to
Well, you haven't listened to it as much as me, so that's self-indulgent.
But, I love the name of it too.
Thank you.
We did workshop that a little bit. We were looking at Bandits biscuits and all sorts of weird names, and then we're like, oh, Hammerbarn something. All of us claim to be really blokey blokes on the tools. We're not, which is kind of a joke.
That's why we put the tool sounds in as much as we can to just give the illusion that we're actually traditional men.
Yeah.
Well, actually, trying to land on the name of Hammerbarn, the alternate name.
Oh yeah.
Took a while. We went through a few different. It was Mega Barn for a while, and then I remember just looking at a Bunnings and going, it looks like a massive barn and it's got a hammer on it.
There you go. It writes itself.
Yeah.
And the rest is history.
Yeah.
Well, obviously we're recording this at a time where the first part of season 3 has been out for a little while now. Mm-hmm. And I got to say, some of the strongest stuff so far. It's so good. I imagine the rest would be coming. But for you guys, do you feel the same breaks that we do, or is it just no
Constant
change in
work.
rhythm, just go?
Yeah, we do all 52 in one hit.
Mm-hmm.
So the only breaks, we feel the breaks between seasons. So, but it does feel like that first 26 was a long time ago.
Sure.
It's all about these current ones now.
Yeah.
I mean, by the time you've finished an ep and watched it through every stage and checked it for music and sound and then animation, you've watched an ep upwards of 20 to 30 times.
Yeah.
From beginning to end. So you kind of, the fresh ones that are new that you've only seen 5 times are a bit more, hold your attention more. So those ones will, they kind of sit in the past, if you will.
Yeah. You're having the parent experience, really, aren't you? You just have to watch them end to end over and over again.
Pretty much.
Oh man, I will just talk forever, but I'm not the only person on this podcast.
Oh wait, what? Really? Could have fooled me.
Yeah. If you listen back to a lot of the episodes, I could fool people as well. But there's just I'll let the other lads jump in because there are just so many Joe Brumms that I want to ask about. There's Joe Brumm the animator, and Joe Brumm the boss, and Joe Brumm the dad and the person and the brother. But do you guys have any questions that fit into those categories?
My sort of first question probably comes down to Joe Brumm the dad. And you've said before, you've talked about this idea of, the kernel of the show is you knowing how to make your kids laugh. And I was just wondering if you've ever thought about where that actually comes from, that the both the desire to do it and sort of the skill or thought process in coming up with a thing. Like I think of Curry Quest and just like, hey, I didn't say you could use both your legs. Just like little moments like that, all of a sudden it comes around to making it into a game, making it into play. Had you ever thought about where that comes from, or what builds it up, what makes it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, definitely my dad had that sense of humor. It was very dry. It wasn't like a joker, but it would be all quite not self-deprecating, but just quite that sort of tough humor, I guess, where I can't think of any examples, but that, it'd be like, his favorite sayings were, you got to grin and bear it and the world doesn't revolve around you. But there would be a sort of like a humor to that. So I think with my kids, like I love it. I don't know whether it's just me, but I love making them laugh. It's like, it feels like such a good thing to do. And they just love being, especially at that age, they just love being bossed around. And as long as they could always get one up on you. The more you make yourself and you kind of exaggerate this idea that you're the authority figure and you just allow that to come tumbling down, and it's flipped, they seem to love it. You'll be rousing on them, pretending, oh, you got to do this, like you're a drill instructor, as long as they can then freeze you and then stick your finger up their nose,
Yeah.
And it's, then you're even more outraged. It's more fun if you're exaggerating, I guess, that.
Yeah. And I suppose at such an early age, the really important things to establish, I imagine, first time I'll say this, not the last, I'm not a dad, but it's like for their own safety and development, like, I'm the boss, you got to listen to me because I'm trying to keep you safe and through this time. And I suppose if that's one thing that's so established, then that's such a powerful thing to play with and joke with, like, yes, I'm the figure, and now I'm going to do this or just be silly or something. It's probably because it's so established in their life with such limited experience, like playing with that is such a cool tool, I guess.
Yes, and unexpected for them, because most of the day you are just telling them what to do, keeping them safe, but then when it flips and it's turns into a game, it's like, oh wow, we're in charge now, and it's I guess like any humor, it's both hard and fascinating to break into its sort of components. And that started the show really. It was a vibe that, look, I know that if Bandit does this, like my kids would laugh, and obviously that physical comedy goes down well, but there was only so many examples of seeing it happen that you could use before. It was just, well, I got a feeling if we do a big backpack game that will make kids laugh, or if we do this, make them laugh. And it was always, it's always a bit unknown. And sometimes it's really surprising. But that was why on the very first screening where we showed some kids, I was quite nervous because we hadn't done it before. And I was like, wow, actually, I never actually thought how kids would do this show. Luckily, it all went well.
Yeah, absolutely, it did. Can I pose a question to Joe Brumm, the animator? I'm going to guess as a kid you were quite into art and drawing and that sort of stuff, or was that something that came to you later? And what's the first thing you remember? Like my child is just at that point of drawing, and it's all just lines and scribble. But I drew a bit as a kid, and there's a few things that I've kept from when I was like, I reckon about 8 years old, that I go, do you know what? I look at it now with an adult brain and I go, I'd improve this, I'd change that. But at the time and still now, I'm proud of that drawing. Is there something that you cherish from those early years?
Well, why did you stop? Do you remember why you stopped?
That's a very good question. I think it was, I discovered video games, to be completely honest. And in fact, even I recently just turned 40, and this gentleman here, Brendan, and a couple of friends got together and went, oh, we know Frank pretty well. And I got, alcohol and stuff as you do for a birthday like that. But they gave me a sketch pad and some nice pencils and that sort of thing to encourage me to get back into it. So
yeah, that's cool. Yeah, often often kid will hit that stage where they want their drawings to really look like the thing they're drawing, which obviously is incredibly difficult, and they often get discouraged and then they go, oh, I can't draw, and then they sort of stop, and so they stop improving. I always drew. I mean, I've got a vivid memory of drawing just a pair of shorts when I was really young, but it was just wars. It was like my dad used to bring all that old computer printer paper back from work and just bung it on the cupboard, so we just had unlimited paper, and we just that's sort of like those profile, you know, like Cortex Command or something, just those lines with just armies just blowing the crap out of each other, but like just years, and really high detail stuff. And I just loved it, and I always did, and I never stopped drawing through high school, and so it was inevitable I was going to do something.
Oh, well, on that animation, in an interview with you that I heard previously, you spoke about how there are some things that you think the hand-drawn stuff really helps shine, like, I don't know, was it the water in the beach episode? And maybe this is a naive question, but as I'm a little bit of a amateur audiophile, and I do love recording music, and I also love film, and I think about the advances we've made in digital film and digital audio, and I once revolted that you couldn't synthesize a proper upright piano sound. You just couldn't do it. And nowadays they're so good and they're so close. I was wondering if the digital direction of everything, have you contemplated those two worlds and the place that analog systems still have going forward? Yeah,
the analog equivalent in animation, in 2D animation, is back to your paper and pen and light boxes and scanning. And I'm definitely in no hurry to get back there. I started my career out on paper, and as recently, I mean, the first job I did when I started my company, like only 11 years ago, was hand drawn. But with sort of Cintiqs and that really becoming affordable, I suppose, it just made so much sense to move into that. But I do really miss, to be honest, I just miss rolling the paper in my hands when you animate. And as much as possible, the software we use was designed by 2D animators. We try, you know, when we're teaching animators, we do try and just recreate a lot of the actions that you would do back when we used to draw. So, you know, drawing and hand-drawn animation is constantly having 5 bits of paper between your fingers and just being able to quickly jump from one to the other and just watching it constantly by rolling it. So we sort of flip the keys a lot, you know, with the arrow keys. Even though it's in a computer, you're still flipping, changing. Technology's just made it lightning. Like just so much.
Yeah, sometimes I worry that when I just cling on and have that romanticism for old ways, I worry that I'm just being an old man. But it's also cool to see that the reason we replicate these things in these ways is because, you know, there's a place. We evolve these things for a reason, I guess. I don't know, maybe I am an old man.
No, it's fine. It just depends on what you're doing. I think for what we're doing, it's impossible. But you look at Don Hertzfeld, he's one of my favorite animators, and, you know, most of his short films, I think including his half-an-hour one, like, were just drawn and shot under a rostrum camera. He didn't even scan them into a TV. And you couldn't recreate that. You know, you see a lot of people recreate that sketchy style in Flash, and it looks like Flash, whereas this looks like some crazy dude. It was going back to the 90s, you know, like.
Yeah, one day I was going on a rant about it, and my friend said something quite wise. He said, like, well, the tool isn't the thing to get annoyed at; it's how the human uses it to create the thing. And I try to keep that in my mind whenever I'm being a troglodyte.
Very wise friend by the sounds.
Yeah.
That wasn't me, was it?
Sorry, Frank.
Damn. All right.
I won't say who it was, so you can pretend it was you.
Okay, I'll take it.
But look, just quickly, our animators, our software does help you save time in a lot of ways, but it's a tool. It's just we need good animators, and we pore over the animation and every key and every action, and you know, in that sense, we're no different from the animators in the old days. It's
Sure.
just you've got a few more time-saving devices.
Oh, and the proof is in the pudding, Joe. Like, I'd believe it
100%.
for sure.
Thanks. Yeah.
So I know you do a show about cartoon dogs, but my question is about cats, particularly cats in the Blueyverse. Now,
Here we go.
this is a bit of a thing on our show where I'm fascinated with Cat Squad. Now, if we're looking at animals as a whole, throughout the rest of Bluey, you see kangaroos, you see the lorikeets in the tree, you see the bats flying, you see animals as they would appear normally in the human world, except for cats, and all we get is that, that hyperactive, borderline annoying sort of anime-styled intro that Muffin loves, and she comes crashing in on the bike. Now, I have a theory. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I would love to be proven wrong by you, of all people here, Joe. But I think that cats in the Bluey world are like dragons are to us. They're mythical creatures. They don't actually exist. They exist in pop culture. In particular, I'm thinking of nods to like Samurai Pizza Cats, if you remember that from the 90s.
Yeah,
Maybe a little bit of Voltron with just a drop of the Avengers in there. How ridiculously far off base am I with that?
Yeah, I quite like that actually. Yeah, they're like a unicorn, right? Just one animal that.
So I was right.
Oh man, we are never going to hear the end of this.
Well, you're not right in that I haven't thought about it. Like to have a correct answer.
Yeah.
I always want to do an episode with a cat in it, with a real cat, but then we'd talk about, wouldn't it be funny if just a bunch of cats moved in?
That would be funny.
Next door, and it just, I think it just always rose up as a funny idea and then never kind of survived. It was a bit high concept.
What's the episode? Is it shops where the kids are playing shops in the woods there?
Oh, and they they pretend to be,
and
they're
then one
buying
of them
leads for the
pretends to
cat.
be a cat.
Yep.
And so it's like they're exposed to the idea that cats are pets, but maybe that doesn't disprove your mythical creature theory, I suppose.
No, well, one of my kids, the teacher that Calypso is based on, who was one of the most excellent teachers I've ever met. She would say, she always told me, like, the kids would play, there'd be just 30 kids all just engaged in about 10 different games. And this would go on, every day. This would go on for 45 minutes. And she said, you can usually tell when it's time to move on to something else because too many of them would turn into cats. and what she said, and that's fine, but if they're cats with no owners,
nice.
That means they've gone wild. And when you
perceptive and observant and ecologically responsible. That's brilliant.
It is. So cats in shops, that was sort of part of that.
Yeah.
I did write a whole another app which never got made that played on that idea, but yeah.
Yet, Joe, yet.
Oh, there's still time.
Yeah.
One of the things, Joe, that I found really interesting is stuff like bats are nocturnal. Oh, good knowledge, kid. It just takes a reality and a responsibility. Well, the idea that you didn't have to get that right. I remember talking around it in the episode of like, what's the decision-making process when you basically get the kid to say something wrong, you don't correct them, and then, is there a degree of social responsibility? How do you get around it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first, the word just made me laugh. My kid said that once. And
all right, so that was a real occurrence.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most of it is, So, and then in terms of getting it right, that's to the point. Like, thousands of kids will watch this and maybe can look. The way I look at it is, your teachers and your parents will teach you how to count to 10, and they'll correct it, and they'll teach you how to spell and all that. Yeah. Like, I think I like cartoons that were just there to be entertaining and to tell good stories. And so, yeah, I don't like. There may be a kid who goes for a week. Like, my kid still thinks German. She learns German. She still thinks it ends with the D. So she calls it German.
German.
Oh man.
And Like,
Just awoken this thing that I used to think that I forgot that I used to think that. Absolutely. German.
Germans.
and she thinks apostrophes are called apostrophes. And I just let her go with it because it's just funny. It makes me laugh. She'll get it.
Yeah.
I have actually tried to tell her a number of times, but that's what's going on. So, yeah, I guess my sense of social responsibility ends at a certain point.
For me, it really just speaks to the authenticity of the show, and really just the fact that it's taking into account that the world is a lot more textured than, you know, a lot of these kids shows sort of are, that everything's correct, everything's in boxes, everything's nicely organized. And I feel like that's something that the series is progressively done more and more. You've said a couple of different times in interviews, it's just like, oh, it's just, you know, sort of meant to be funny, and if the parents don't hate it, then that's cool. But I feel like it's more and more it's been turning into kids, you know, it went from sort of kids potentially learning about adult emotions, and then from adults learning about adult emotions, even going through things like Baby Race, and even now, like one of the ones that got me recently was Fairy Tale, and just how much of a you were talking about your dad before, and I'm sure there's a bit of that in Bob there. But yeah, just this idea of progressively evolving and taking in the needs and stories of that adult audience as well. Yeah, I was just wondering about that. Was that a conscious shift, or has that just happened with time and telling different stories?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that definitely Charlie, I think it's so incremental for me, but I think Charlie, our producer, you know, he sort of said, look, the stories are different now than to what they were in season one. Season one were, you know, probably a lot more preschool and kind of really anchored in that little nocturnal sort of child's world. I think just naturally as my kids have aged and I guess I've wanted to tell slightly more complicated stories over the seasons, the show has you know, aged up's not quite the right word, because I do pride myself on making sure there's always something for that 4-year-old. And 4-year-old is the youngest in my head that I write for. I know kids younger than our show watch it, but Bluey wouldn't be Bluey if I wrote it genuinely for a 2-year-old
Sure.
to comprehend. So, yeah, look, I just want to keep telling good stories that I find unique, and I think just by a process of evolution, they end up just going into experiences of my life that have only really come about because of parenting. You know, like Baby Race is a very adult story in a lot of ways, and it's only came about through me being a parent. I wouldn't have known any of that sort of content or whatever. So yeah, it's one of the constant battles. I want to tell stories that entertain me and entertain parents, but we can't alienate the kids, because ultimately, you know, at the end of the day, it's a kids' show. So I've sort of found this way, which I think works, in more recent eps, where you can have a scene with 3 adults talking, and maybe it's a 20-second long scene of exposition. And there was a good example in Cafe, I think it was, where, you know, they're all sitting around the table talking about, you know, advancing the plot or whatever needed to happen, but you've just got Bingo trying to pour some orange juice.
Yes.
You know, and it's like, and then later on she's pouring cereal and she's doing that thing that kids always, or my kids always do. And it's like, bam, there you've got your 4-year-old, all right?
Yeah.
And, you know, I'd like to hope that the 4-year-olds still follow the story, but in every scene, it's like there's always something for that kid who just wants to laugh at, you know, Bingo pouring the orange.
Sure.
That was my way of like having my cake and eating it too.
And that goes to something I was thinking about, Joe Brumm, the boss or team leader or whatever title that you prefer. To your choice to have, I've heard you speak before about animators and writing that balance between uniformity and creation and creative freedom. And that really speaks to it must be a real advantage to have that, to be able to have those lots of moments on screen. Like you've got your moment for your four-year-old, and it could be in conjunction with your moment for an adult, because you've got people, and it's not just the burden's not just on you. It's or the writing. It's the animators going, hey, what if this character was doing this at that time? And knowing, I imagine it must feel great to be in a team as an animator where it's not just allowed but encouraged to be thinking of those moments.
Yeah, well, I mean, the latest one we're working on now, it was one of these scenes was an afterthought. And I went, oh God, I forgot to do that thing. So I just put what's called a blue note, where I just write what I want to happen, which is like Socks walks in and does some funny stuff for like 30 seconds, you know. And so now it's on the animators.
Sure.
Yeah, look, we try and it's always a real balance of allowing the animators freedom to you know, bring their character acting skills, whilst also following, you know, the director's vision of what needs to happen in that scene. I would call that, it's just that creative tension, you know. Sometimes what the animator does doesn't work, and we've got to come in and write roughshod over it. I would say most times what they do is something I wouldn't have really thought of to do, but has just made it so much stronger.
Yeah.
An example, one of Beth's scenes in Chess, where Chili picks up the little king. I think she's teasing Bandit, and she sort of waves it in his face a bit. I think in my original animatic, she just sort of held it on the board there, you know, and it was one of those moments where you first saw it and you go, hang on, that wasn't quite what I had in mind, but you watch it again and again and you think, no, it's way funnier, it's way better.
Yeah.
It's very hard to do for someone who likes to get in and you know, really control everything, but more often than not, it just has made the show better.
Yeah, well, on that, I have heard you speak before about the way you wanted to put this team together, because I think you said, it was a while ago now, but you said you missed that environment of being around the team from working on Charlie and Lola, etc. Did you always suspect that having a team that has that kind of comfort and freedom and camaraderie, did you always suspect that that was what creates the best product, and you were happy that it was confirmed on Charlie and Lola and other things that you're proud of in the past? Or did you learn that and then just have to recreate it and have to do it again? And how much of that is responsible for the glory that we get to enjoy?
Well, if we're just talking precisely about, I guess, this issue of creative tension and creative freedom, if it's just that issue, Charlie and Lola was over this side of the extreme. The animators basically it was very loose cutout sort of show. The animators had a lot of freedom just to animate a scene and do some crazy stuff. And Kitty, our director, was very like, yep, that looks great. It was a cutout show, so it didn't matter too much from scene to scene if styles changed a little bit, right? And then I did just some sick cover at Astley Baker, who made Peppa Pig and Ben and Holly's Little Kingdom is what I worked on. And that was kind of over this side, right? Like their shows are just super disciplined, I would say, in their animation, the way they move, you know, the geometry which they move, and it's beautiful. But you know, I just went in with my child, let's do all this, and this, and then I kind of found out later, it's like, oh yeah, most of that just got redone. And I remember thinking,
okay, wow,
yeah, you know, and rightly so. It just wasn't in the style of the show, you know.
Sure.
It was quite embarrassing, but I remember taking those two experiences and going, all right, you know, I'd like Bluey or whatever I do to be somewhere in the middle. Now,
sure.
Depending on who you talk to on which day, they would say it's more over here, more over there.
Okay, yeah.
I'm going to ask about that because it's, I think one of my favorite things ever is Bandit as an octopus. Like, you could make a show, Joe, that is Bandit as an octopus having adventures, and I would watch it. Please make that show. But one of the, you know, maybe it's when you're on that end of the spectrum, it's when the characters move or become animals. You know, the other great one is Asparagus, when they get to become all the different animals. What's that like? Is that do the animators hate that? Because I imagine there's quite a lot of rejigging you have to do to the characters to make that work, or do they love it? What's the experience of just like messing with the characters that much?
Yeah, it's it's a 3-step process. It hits 3 teams equally, not quite equally hard. So anytime that a character's got to do something radically different with their rig, like impersonate an animal, it starts with art direction, who have to, on top of just doing the sets and props, they've suddenly got to go back to our character and do a bunch of different mouth shapes and maybe eye shapes and head shapes. And then our designers, who sort of, they're like our builders, they rig all the artwork, so it's ready to animate. They then have to, really refine that and take that one mouth shape and make it be able to do lip sync and hand shapes and all that. So, and then the animators to be honest, the animators get the fun part, because it's all done for them and they get to just really have fun, doing something different. So it hits our art directors and our designers quite hard.
Well, we appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. It's so
Thanks
much
for taking
fun.
it for the team.
Bandits very hard to make on all fours. They've got these big rectangular bodies.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Crawl. It's quite difficult getting the head and neck to work.
I love the shot wherein I think it's Baby Race, and you see them rolling from the side, and you get to find out that they're sort of rectangular tubes, as opposed to I don't know what you imagine them as.
Yeah,
but,
and the bird's eye view
revealed
shot in where they're playing squash.
Yeah.
I've got when we had to make the figurines, all that became not so theoretical, right? So this is where we ended up.
Yep.
So that's the ones you've got.
Yeah, right.
Fairly round, but
fairly round. Yeah, okay.
This little fridgy type dude was the first prototype.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more Duplo-like in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So whenever you take 2D into 3D,
it's always a bit of fun. Yeah.
On the baby race subject, Joe, my situation is a little bit different from these guys. You might have picked up from listening to the podcast. Their dads. I actually I'm a live-in uncle with my sister and her husband, and they've got a 2.5-year-old, and my sister is actually expecting twins very soon.
Oh, wow.
And her name's Erin, and there's no one I love more in the world and no one I'm more proud of. And it would be remiss of me not to pass on to you that she absorbs information like nothing, and she read all the books, and she looked at all the support online, and she said, Baby Race, the episode, she found nothing else that more perfectly captured what it felt early on. She said, it's different from Mum. Dad was there to support, but there are some things that only mums can do, and there are some things that they go through, and she just on her behalf, thank you for that, because she scarcely a day goes by where she doesn't go, that episode, and in particular.
Well, thanks for passing that on. You're welcome, Aaron. It was look, that app's just careful observation of my wife's experience.
Something about stretch marks. I think I have a similar feeling, because I hint at through the shows that I make academic previously, or just that's my headspace. Watching
really
I never knew that.
You guys watching Fairy Tale, I think.
Oh my God.
Having a telling of changes in generational parenting.
Oh man.
Just so fast, so astute. So I think there is something about telling it as a story that just makes it so much more resonant. So, well, I don't know if I can make that into a question.
What do you think, Joe, were the main catalysts for that exponential change in parenting styles? Is the internet? Did the internet do it?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm not a great person to ask it. I think, it's not like we got flogged as a kid. There's sort of 2 categories. There was kids who got flogged, and it was you had to look away.
Yeah.
And then there was we would get hit, but
I got spanked.
If we could outrun it, it was
Yeah.
sort of it's a bit like Grand Theft Auto. You're 5-star.
Yeah.
Eventually, we'd go down.
Yeah.
And it was sort of like a bit light, you know.
Yeah.
But it just it's not something. It didn't even enter our heads to like do it. I guess, well, you know, my wife and I when we had the kids, and that wasn't. That wasn't like in a book or anything.
Yeah.
I'm not a great person to ask. It's a good question. Because
I should clarify now that I've thrown my dad under the bus. Like, I maybe I did get spanked once or twice, but I was doing stupid things that endangered my well-being. And I've spoken to Dad recently, and he said nowadays he just like would not do it. Like, his attitude has changed with the world's attitude. But on Fairy Tale, oh my God. Coming from the brother angle, I'm one of 7 kids. I've got an older brother and a younger brother. So I like to think I'm like the bandit of the situation.
Oh, I see.
And that's an interesting thing that I noticed, because maybe I'm silly, or maybe I'm not the only one, or I was silly to presume that in Double Babysitter, when we're sort of introduced to Rads, I assumed, maybe this is me being really prejudiced, I assumed that because he wasn't married, and why wasn't he married? He was a younger brother. Like that's where my head went.
Good question.
But did Fairy Tale? I mean, you guys might even have a different take on that, because we haven't spoken about Fairy Tale in the podcast. But it seemed to establish, you know, the age of Radley, Bandit, Stripe. Is that sort of where you guys were thinking, or was that ever concrete?
I'm not sure where it got made concrete before Fairy Tale. I think you're right, and it's probably an assumption, just because I guess statistically you get, you know, your eldest is first to get married, and you know what I mean. Eventually, your younger brother's still not married.
Mm-hmm.
That was a rambly way to say, I think you get, you know, there's an order to when you get married just based on your age. But I think, look, at the end of the day, it was just based on my brothers, and Stripe's the younger brother. I'm the middle. And so Rad is kind of, you know, it's loosely based on just having an older brother. I wanted to write about having an older brother.
Yeah.
And you know what, but there's also something cool about, like, I think it would sting Bandit even more knowing that his older brother was still single and a bachelor, you know? It's like...
excellent. I hadn't thought of... Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Something that he can't really talk about with... Maybe you wouldn't broach that subject with Chili, or maybe you would. I don't know. Their relationship's pretty open like that. They can talk about it. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, but Fairy Tale was just... I wanted to just do something in the 80s when Bandit was a kid.
Yes.
It was the 80s.
Yeah, you know, all just the visual stuff of it was what got me excited.
Was it sort of Double Dragon? Was it kind of like a Double Dragon thing on the arcade machine? That's sort of like what it felt like.
Listen, the ongoing process of making sure that game is different enough to Double Dragon.
That's all I need, Joe. That's all I need. I might even cut that out.
A long and involved process, but I feel that we've got there. We have a game that was big in the 80s.
Yeah. So the firm responsible for Double Dragon, it was just a guess.
Random, totally random.
I've got the fish and chip shop gets me. The crossbar window thing, the signage. It's just like, you know, where did you get the example photos to do that? Well, I think, and this sort of brings me back to like the Australian elements of the show, that particular Australian flavor. You said before, you know, you didn't want to do the cheesiness or having koalas and you know, kangaroos everywhere, and that's it. But I feel like you guys have figured out a perfect balance of what Australia means to us, and I feel like it ends up being toilet blocks and fish and chip shops and secondhand takeaway places.
Oh man, a fairy tale again. Just in the background, that toilet block, those sort of the brick pattern, the cinder block pattern there. I'm there. Sorry, Marty, go on.
Yeah, and just we've talked before about the carpet and just the way that we can feel the texture of that sort of thing. How much drink it soaked up over time. All those sorts of things that just make it really situated. Yeah, what sort of conversations happens around those props and things when you as a director?
Yeah, well, a hell of a lot. Like that's one of the things, and I don't know why we do it. Other than just if you're going to do it, you might as well do it well. In the like the fairy tale one, that was really interesting. Usually the art directors, right? They're the ones who do all that, right? Richie and I feed in different ideas. Oh, it'd be good if that was like that. I remember having that there. The art directors do it all, and they add all their beautiful details. The fairy tale one was the exception, right? Because it was set in the 80s. Now, that was a real generational split in our studio because there was only, we got 50 people in our studio, but it was only me and Rich who were like knew the 80s.
Yeah.
And Charlie, there was like four or five of us, and we suddenly were like, man, like it was 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And so we were having, but our animators would bring all their parents' old photos in, and we used to look at them.
Oh man. like this, see? It was this land.
Do it like that, but with more hair. Like.
Yeah. I just we had to explain things to them. No, there'll be cigarettes back there.
Man, just the major look, you dirty chook, and the suffer. I just couldn't believe it. These are things I just never thought I'd hear again.
It's like opening a time capsule.
Yeah, and just all the brotherhood stuff, Joe. I have to say, like, even not just in fairy tale as they were kids, like all that suffer and like Jinx and all chasing them and the bikes and the big. Where are your helmets? It was the 80s. And but also like now that they're all grown up, even in like Pizza Girls. When Stripe won't shut up about his new car and Bandit kind of takes him down a peg for it. It's like, enough about your car, mate. But it's like in good humor. Just all that brotherly stuff is just so on point.
Yeah, you know what? In Pizza Girls, like my older brother, if you're not talking about archaeology of World War II, it's hard to get his interest. And at a barbie, he's just got this pose where he'll just sort of sit there, hands in his pocket, just blanked out of the conversation. And that scene, I think they're talking about Stripe's car. I just said, look, I want Bandit sitting in the back.
Nice.
Like this.
Nice.
Amazing. I was going to ask if, because you do borrow so much from your life, is there any times you've just had to be, no, sorry, we can't go along to this party. I made that episode last week and might have seen it, so I'm just going to have to. So it was a little bit too close to the bone.
Not that I can think of. But Bluey's a nice show at the end of the day. I do like to hope that, there's no baddies in Bluey. Like, it was quite fun actually having some fun with Wendy this season.
Yeah.
It
was great.
And same with Judo, like you'll probably see Judo a bit more in the next, the second half of season 3. But
cool.
Look, at the end of the day, my little brother Dan, who does Stripe's voice, I think sometimes maybe he thinks Stripe's based on him, but I'm always quick to say, no, man, Stripe's based on me. Like,
sure.
And it's like Ferris Bueller, but Stripe's like, actually.
And Wendy's a good egg. She did make her 5 lasagnas,
Yeah, she goes all right. One episode I'd love to just sort of quickly touch on that stands out from the season 3 we've got so far is Rain. Now, that gets a lot of praise because it is so very different. You see, I've seen other shows do a similar styled episode where it's, for whatever reason, there's no dialogue or it's just music. Was that always your intention writing that particular episode? And how, you've got this amazing voice cast that we know so well. How did it feel like just turning to all of them and just go, no, we don't need you guys for this episode. You just, this is the plan. Or did it evolve into, the silent episode per se?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, I grew up making short films, and a lot of short films, Bluey was pretty much the first stuff where anything in what I animated had a character saying anything, right? So, I always loved. So, there's a old short film called Balance by a couple of German guys. I can't remember their name, but won an Oscar. It's one of the best short films you can see, right? And there's no dialogue. So I kind of grew up in that world. So it's not alien to me to want to tell a story with no dialogue and just really rely on, the strength of my team to act it out. But the trick is, how do you do it which doesn't feel contrived or weird? And I just thought, that sound, especially in Queensland, where it really is just chucking it down, it has I guess a deafening effect, right, on the roof and all that, where it's just dialogue's not really possible. So that's sort of, I hope one of the reasons Rain works silently. You're trying to imagine that the rain's just so loud, you're not going to be able to have a conversation.
Yeah. Forgive me for not knowing this, but is the Healer household roof tiled, or is it a corrugated iron?
Tin roof, surely.
Is the typical
corrugated?
Yeah, the typical Queenslander is a corrugated iron, is it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, there's nothing beats that sound, mate. Nothing beats that sound.
No, totally. Yeah, and Rain, I think it was, I think I was listening to a particular song, and I just liked the idea of, just that the rhetorical, it's like, it's sort of sometimes what having kids is like. It's just like, why would you even try and stop this kid?
Yeah.
They're like a little force of nature. It's just as difficult as trying to do those dams we grew up.
Yeah.
And that app was originally set out in the gutter. I think that's where that started. That app started from, as a note from season 1, I was just like, I want to do an app where they're playing in the gutter after the rain.
Sure. Nice.
It's just, you grow up doing it.
Yeah.
So that's where that app came about. And it was originally set in the gutter, but we realized that, look, that's not safe, so we shifted it to the thing.
Sure.
Yeah, often these apps just come from just one little sentence, so that'd be cool.
Oh man. Well, I think you're a force of nature, Joe Brumm.
Thanks, mate. I'll get that as a little wav.
Yeah. I'll send it to you.
Joe Brumm, force of nature.
Well,
That'll be my ringtone from now.
Well, we've kept you for nearly an hour, mate. Marty, is there something you're desperate to ask?
There is.
You've been so generous with us already.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm easy. Yeah, look, it's after work, man. Go as long as you want.
Don't give us that option. So no sleeping tonight for you, Joe. One thing I do have to confirm. So one of the things I have speculated about a few times is somebody with a game design experience, background, thinking, and I was wondering, I'm increasingly learning about your style. I think that might be coming from you. So in episodes like Shadowlands, which kind of feel like a platforming game, or Octopus itself, which I think you wrote with Mark, or The Claw, just these ideas of, how gameplay and stuff like that works. I understand you've done you went through and did some research. Do you think it comes from that, or have you looked into game design? Yeah.
Look, I grew up playing, Commodore 64 onwards, so platformer games were a big thing for me. And I've worked with Halfbrick, who are based up.
Yeah, right.
And worked on we share a little project together, and made that into a game. So I had that sort of experience of being not a game designer on that, but
in the space. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And it's always fascinating seeing how they work. And I still sort of play touch with them every week and just always sort of seeing what they're up to. There's a lot of apps. The Beach was very much like just set like a little platform game.
Nice. Of course.
Shadowlands. Yeah, Shadowlands, it wasn't consciously like a video game sort of thing, but I just wanted to make sure that the mechanics of all the little shadow games were interesting and fun things, or nuggets, I think, as they would call them in the game design world. I can't think of any other apps, but that platformer game aesthetic I've always loved. I don't know why. It's just I just love it's so crisp and clear, and you get to have that lovely depth of field. So whenever possible, our shots, I always try and push that camera low as I can
to get that parallax. And
and it works with cutout software, so it's sort of it's just feels good.
Awesome.
Amazing. Thank you.
Would you be up for like a lightning round, Joe?
Yeah, bring it on.
Here we go.
All right.
Okay.
Well, I might even put some tense sort of music in there. You won't be able to hear it now live, obviously, but if you could just give your answers in a fashion that makes it feel like a lot is at stake.
All right, do my best.
Okay. All right. How are we going to rotate this? Brenny, you want to go first?
Sure. All right. Favorite character to write jokes for?
Probably Bandit. Favorite character is Rusty, but Bandit's the funniest to write for because he's just sort of like me.
Correct. Ding. I'm going to say correct after every single one, by the way.
like in the movies that where it's just like, oh no, there's songs like they're just to make me laugh.
Yeah.
Nice. Favorite character to write touching moments for?
Yeah, Chili.
Yep.
Like Chili's who, I don't know why, but Chili's who I guess has the most internal life in the app, especially in season 3. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. She's the heart of the show, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Favorite character for physical comedy?
Bingo. she's a bit unco.
I know I said correct, incorrect, but that is correct.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Most unexpected line reading that ended up in the episode?
Oh, that's a great question. It's a subtle one, actually. In Keepy Uppy, right at the beginning, when Bluey Mum says, have we got a game for you? And Bluey says, does it keep you uppy? And Mel just delivered this very just matter of fact, like, yeah, it's keep you uppy. Like,
oh my God, that is the best answer, because every time I try to replicate that, and when we joke about it with my sister at home, I can never get it right. Like it's the same. It's the same. It's a perfect balance of like matter of fact and sharp, but defeated. But oh man, that's brilliant.
Like Mel's fantastic. She's like with Dave. Oh, sorry, I'm probably ruining your lightning.
That's all right. It's still very tense.
Yeah. Dave's like so much fun in the booth because he's just so explosive and in the moment. But the way we do it is he just copies me, and he does sort of his own versions. Whereas Mel, because she's an actor, I just read the line before it, and if I want to mold it a bit, I just ask, can I have some more like anger in that or this and that, and she'll give me stuff which I wouldn't have even thought of. And so yeah, that example, it was Mike, the editor, who chose. I wouldn't have chosen that take, but he put it in there, and I don't know why it makes me laugh, but I think it's something the defeated nature.
Yeah.
I can't even surprise you.
It's not like a bitter or disappointed kind of defeated. It's just like acceptance. I don't know.
This is what it is. Yep.
Yeah. That was a good one.
Is there a moment or a favorite moment that you, unfortunately, due to the nature of Bluey being 7 minutes, that had to hit the cutting room floor that you really wish was still in the show?
Yeah. It's actually it hasn't come out yet. This it's just a lot of it's unicourse based. I got this whole sequence where I won't ruin the app, but Bandit's proving that he can read his mind, Unicorse's mind. And so he says, think of something, and I'll tell you what it is. And so Unicorse goes on. It's almost a page long. This whole spiel, like, and then Bandit, he goes, all right, I got it. And Bandit goes, okay, is it this? And it's basically like he decides to build a taco car that like, and then he thinks it all through. It runs on sour cream, so we're going to have to like go up the Bruce Highway and put a bunch of sour cream. I don't know. It made me laugh, but it just went for like 30 seconds.
Too long.
Oh, me, oh my.
Tacos for dinner, anyone?
Yeah. Oh, I've forgotten whose turn it is. Is it Marty?
Is it mine?
Oh,
I think Brenny should take this
should I
one.
take this one?
Yeah, you should.
Oh,
take
thanks.
this
Sorry,
Go,
Marty. Favorite Indiana Jones homage?
Oh, wow. It probably is the Raiders game because
Yeah.
I mean I played that game with my kids. That's where it came from, and just because I guess it's one of the most seminal scenes of arguably the best of the trilogy.
That was going to be my next question.
And it just when you play it with the kids, especially when they're young, it's just they go hysterical.
Yeah.
So it's kind of for both of those reasons. I would say it's that.
For what it's worth, that was the first reference in the show that I saw. And my ears pricked up and I just went, like this show needed anything else to get me all the way on board.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Like it's this weird thing with Bandit being an archaeologist. And my older brother is quite a successful archaeologist actually, and he really gets out into the field. He'll be in the jungles of Borneo and Flores, and he's got a lot of stories. And so kind of, and he will. I don't know much these days, but once a month he will rewatch Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
Nice.
And on a dig recently, he was working with a Japanese archaeologist in the field, who when they finished, he had a lot of respect for Adam's work, and he presented him with a replica of the actual World War II satchel that Indiana Jones has.
Wow.
Got the identical one, and
My Lord.
he wears it with pride.
How good.
So for me, I love Bandit being an archaeologist. There's this, and I do my best to put a lot of our versions of Adam's original artwork on the wall. And
Yes.
he's had a few nature paper covers, so we try to every now and then we have Bandit, having one of them in. And there is a YouTube clip which we've animated, and it hasn't been released, but of Bandit giving a little lecture about a canine fossil that he's found. Hopefully he'll see the light of day one day.
Man.
I
Awesome.
hope so. That'd be great.
Oh, man.
I'm going to go dream special guest voice. Could be someone alive or dead.
Oh wow! You know what? We've had a lot of my dream voices so far. To be honest. We'll go a dead one. I'd go. Napoleon.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
You'd be
man.
interesting to work with in the booth.
You can cut that answer out. Yeah, I don't know.
You'd have to point the mic stand down for him, I think.
You know what? I would love to do. A serious answer is we're going to do some more YouTube clips, after season 3, and I want to do a little series in the Dream House with Jerry Lee, the butler.
Oh, yes.
Nice.
And just little throwaway things of him sort of onboarding some new butlers and stuff. And I'd love to get David Mitchell to do the voice.
Oh,
the British comedian.
Amazing.
That'd be cool.
That'd be perfect. I don't know whether that'd be possible, but
Well, we assume he's listening. So
Yeah.
David,
Yeah. I'll tell him now. David! Dave!
that would be convenient.
He just won't go home. No.
All right. Quick one. Favorite dog world prop in the show?
Dog world, meaning it's related to dogs? Or
Yeah,
just-
so I'm thinking tennis balls or stuff that you would normally associate with dogs.
Just anything in the world of Bluey,
Yeah.
any prop that you've really enjoyed.
We just went to the Healer house. I really want the letterbox. Quite like how they made the letterbox, but what I loved most about the Healer house and the prop that I would really love was I do really like I like all the gnomes. I love Jeremy, but I like the little garden Buddha gnome.
Yes.
Dog one. They made at the Bluey house we had up here. They made a little recreation of that, and it just looked really beautiful. That's there's something about that I love. It's our little dog Buddha version.
Excellent. I think we've changed the order. So,
right.
favorite running gag.
I love Winton's dad. Our layout. I think our layout artist started it in season 2 when Winton's dad. We established that he was, he was separated from Winton's mum. And so she would, layout artists, what they do is they take all the actors and backgrounds and they put them on the stage ready for the animators. So they have it when there's crowd scenes, they have a lot of control over which side characters they bring in to make up crowds. So she would always try and put Winton's dad either out on a date or I think once she just had him like under the tree in the background, just looking sad. I think he's eating a sausage at one point. Over the course of the series, he's sort of been out on variously unsuccessful dates.
Just sitting at a table on his own, like being stood up.
Yeah. But it didn't always make it past layout. But
that's great.
Favorite peaceful moment?
I really like this. I really like the end of the creek. Once they come out of the creek, I guess it's probably when Bluey has the little run-in with the little wallaby sort of thing.
Peru, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Peru. That was Charlie, our producer's idea, and it was such a good idea. And it just, I'd never forget sitting in the room, the music with Joff, and we were trying to just get that scene to have a little more, draw you into the present a bit more. And Joff just started playing just with that little held note on the accordion, and we just sort of built that in there. And Lisa just animated it beautifully, and our art directors and VFX just really did a good job on that creek. And from that point on to the end of that film feels like it's just the whole pace just goes down, and you just feel like, oh yeah, that's what it felt like after you would emerge from the creek, when you're a kid, after 5 hours of playing in it and have to head home and the light was fading. I've got a real memory of that sort of energy, I guess. And to me, our team really captured that in that whole end sequence of this.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this is the final,
the last one. And because we like to keep it classy here on the Hammer Project, we might have to edit this out for our US listeners. Favorite poop joke?
It's. But I'll just let you know, everyone is fought hard for.
We believe it. We believe it.
My favourite was the fairies one in the cupboard when Dad farts and blames it on the fairies. My thing with fart jokes is, or poop jokes, I'll never stick one in just to be gratuitous. I'll only put it in if it brings something new to the genre. And it's like, look, you've got fairies running around the house.
Yeah.
Blame on the fairies. That just made me laugh. Probably the most memorable one, my God, was in Easter where Dad is on the toilet. Yep. And before they come in, there's just one scene where I was like, look, we need Dad to really, it's so bad he's just got to open the window. And it was a real fight to keep it in. And it was originally a bit longer. He gave himself a real dressing down for me. And I like
it made the cut that he just goes, bandit. He does tell himself off a little bit.
It was such long debates. Right? Can he just open the window? And I said, no, he's got to be so disappointed in himself that he starts talking to himself.
Do you ever catch yourself out in those moments when there's a full-on discussion going on about something like that? Do you ever go, Do you ever get to appreciate in the moment the glorious ridiculousness of the debate about this gag?
Yeah, I wouldn't say right in the moment. It's usually on the way home. I just think,
Yeah.
I'm getting paid. Sometimes there's 8 people and broadcasters around a table vehemently arguing about should a cartoon dog open a window after taking a massive dump.
I have to say,
be a fly on the wall.
I have
one
to
of those
say,
meetings.
I'm not a person who particularly likes scatological type humor, but you got me so hard. Yeah, it started off as a wee, but it turned
you
it
win
turned
Marty
into
over,
a
Joe. You're
poo.
doing something.
That was just brilliant.
Yeah.
So you turned me at that point.
Well, look, that's my promise. I'll never do it just to be
Thank you.
gross for its own
Thank you.
sake.
I appreciate it.
Oh man, haven't seen it yet. So, Joe, thank you so much, mate.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, look, you guys, I really like your podcast. It's to me, it's like the Gotta Be Done podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I can just tell that you guys are really good mates and you really make each other laugh. And there's something really warm, even if you were talking about not my show.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's always good. You know, you just tell you guys, I don't know, you obviously known each other a long time, and you just it's a nice thing to listen to when you've got 3 mates, you know, in a room together. So yeah, it's a great podcast.
Oh, thanks,
Well,
mate. Really appreciate it.
I'm just going to phone it in now. That's all I needed. That's it. That's done.
It doesn't hurt that you're, you know, praising the thing that I've made.
Thank you so much for what you've given the world. Like if I let myself say more than that, I'll just talk forever and ever, and these guys will attest to that. But just
Please stop.
there was a
Basket,
world,
Brandon, go
there
to
was
your
a
basket.
world before. Yeah, I will. There was a world before Bluey, and I'm so glad that I get to live in the world with Bluey in it. They're
Well, look, you know, you hear these 2 words all the time in response to something like that, but I mean them literally when I say it is my pleasure.
Can you believe that?
Woo!
What a guy. Marty, did you enjoy yourself as much as it looked like you were enjoying yourself?
A large amount more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't seen you like that since the Monte Carlo incident.
Oh, what a day that was.
Yeah.
That was.
It was like 2 Monte Carlos. Or maybe a Monte Carlo that had 4 layers.
Well,
I don't know.
that was a 4-layered Monte Carlo kind of an interview.
Yeah, that's the sort of day I'm having.
And Frank, there was a bit
Oh.
before we began,
Yes.
where because we are recording as we always do me and Frank, Marty's in Sydney obviously. Frank and I usually record in his toy room, where you cannot point the camera in a direction that doesn't get 900,000 Transformers and Ninja Turtles.
Correct.
And none other than Joe Brumm spotted them. Should we play a little clip of the little exchange you guys?
If you want to know Joe Brumm's favourite Transformer, keep listening.
Hey, here we go. Frank's sitting next to me.
How you going?
Hey, Frank, yeah, good. Oh, look at the Ninja Turtles.
Yes, this is my my little humble abode. When I'm not talking about Bluey, I'm talking about all this stuff behind me on my other shows. So Supergirl there. I've got a Supergirl and sort of Marvel Legends over that way, Transformers and He-Man in that direction. But yeah, so it keeps me busy and keeps me poor.
I bet. Wow, you got all the...
To his credit, when he got married, we were all like, "Oh, here we go, this is it." But he did marry an enabler. He was smart enough to do that.
I can see. Wow, you got my brother's and I's favourite Transformer growing up, because we had it and then lost it, so it had this mythical sort of status with us. It was one of the triple changes called Blitzkrieg, I think.
Blitzwing, yep.
Swing, yeah.
Into like a beige sort of tank and then like a purple jet and back again. Yep,
That's
another
it.
one.
Yep. He was
Nice.
There you go.
You've just made Frank's entire decade,
I
by the way.
I don't need to ask any more questions.
Just so you know.
I was just testing your authenticity.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
So I'm pretty impressed.
You look a little bit like you enjoy yourself there, Frank.
How good?
One day maybe we'll be lucky enough to do that again. I don't know.
But look, massive thank you to Joe Brumm and all the people at Ludo Studios for giving us this wonderful show that we love to talk about. We had a wonderful time. I hope you listeners took something from that as well, listening to the great man. And I'm not talking about Brendan. I'm talking about Joe Brumm himself.
Right, gotcha.
Yeah. So from all of us at Hammerbarn Project, thank you very much. And for now, back to you, Jade.
Thanks, Frank. Now back to Snickers with the traffic.